Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. It's been a while, and the reason for that is I have been watching my second ever anime, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Today I am here to give my entire full thoughts on it in immense detail. Positives, negatives, my favorite moments, episodes, characters, and such. So strap in for a long video, drop a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more. I want to quickly explain the ranking system that I will be using throughout this video. Instead of giving every episode a number score, I found that using colors is easier. This idea was inspired by Chris Ranks, and here's how it works. Purple, legendary, absolute peak fiction, I love everything about it. Blue, fantastic, I love mostly everything about it. Cyan, above average, pretty good, has fun moments, and you like a lot about it. Green is good, could be slow and have average moments, but you enjoyed it. Yellow is mid, probably slow or had moments you disliked, could just be boring. Orange is bad, I did not enjoy my time watching this. And lastly, red, garbage. I hated watching this and I never want to watch it again. Trust me, there are no reds here. I actually really like this show. I will have the episode names in these colors while I am talking about them so you can know my thoughts while I speak on the episodes, and at the end of the video I will rank my top 10 favorite episodes. So the reason I chose Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood as my second anime after Attack on Titan is because my friend Tyson recommended me AOT, and after I enjoyed that so much, he said that this was his second favorite anime and he recommended it to me, so I hopped straight in. I absolutely love the first episode of the show, which is strange considering it's actually a filler episode. However, it actually serves a purpose in setting up our characters. We meet Ed, Al, Mustang, Maze, Armstrong, and Bradley without it feeling overwhelming at all. On top of that, we get an anime original scene where we see Bradley kill McDougal, and it is, without a doubt, one of my favorite scenes in the entire show.
Bradley. Perfect!
The entire switch to black and white with the Philosopher's Stone being the only thing in color is so damn cool. The character work that this scene does for Bradley without any dialogue being necessary is frankly brilliant. It immediately establishes him as a threat who will kill you despite it being wrong, and it shows that there is more to him than meets the eye, no pun intended. I forgot to mention that we also see Kimberly for the first time in this episode, which I think is a solid choice. And to end the episode, we see Lust and Gluttony for the first time, introducing our first long-term antagonist. The first day is another great episode. It's always a great sign when you have an episode this early that will instantly make you understand and care about our two main characters and understand their motivations. We meet Winry and Panako for the first time in this episode as well. I absolutely love the setup to Edward and Al's transmutation. Then, of course, the transmutation scene as well is done amazingly. And it's downright horrifying. Edward seeing truth is another insane scene, and it's amazing how we can see a scene like this in episode 2 and still not know anything about the larger scope of the story.
I will show you the truth.
City of Heresy continues the streak of great early episodes. In this episode, we see that Edward and Al visit Lior in an attempt to find a Philosopher's Stone and expose the fraud that is Father Cornello. Along the way, we meet Rose, who is a great character for this episode. I do have a very minor gripe with this episode, and all it is I think it should have been swapped with episode 2. I think it would have been interesting that while Cornello is explaining to Rose that Ed and Al perform the ultimate alchemy sin by performing human transmutation, that we ourselves as the viewer doubt Ed and Al a bit. I think it proves for a more effective ending, and it helps us side with Rose more early in the episode. However, that's a minor issue, and it doesn't detract from the fact that this episode is great. And that brings me to Edward's speech to Rose at the end of the episode, which is absolutely incredible. Another one of my favorite scenes of the show.
That hope was all I had left. What am I supposed to believe in now? Tell me what to do. Please.
I can't tell you that. You have to figure it out. Stand up and walk. Keep moving forward. You've got 2 good legs, so use them. You're strong enough to make your own path.
The next episode is the one I'm sure you guys have been waiting for, the famous Chimera episode. And man, is this one a doozy. An Alchemist's Anguish is hands down one of the best episodes of the show, and for good reason. The setup for this episode is done so well. We learned about Shao Tucker, how he's previously made a talking chimera, and if he doesn't pass his inspection day, he'll lose his license as a state alchemist. Ed and Al are learning about his research during all this, and they meet his daughter and dog, Nina and Alexander. We see that Ed and Al love Nina and Alexander, enjoy spending time with them and playing with them. And then that brings us to the tragic moment where we learn that Shao Tucker has made his second ever talking chimera. He fused Nina and Alexander to make it happen, and Ed goes ballistic. Another one of the best scenes in the show.
That person, Edward. That person, Edward. That person, Edward. Big brother Ed.
Mr. Tucker, when did you first get your state certification?
Let's see. It was 2 years ago.
And when did your wife leave you?
That was 2 years ago, too.
I just have one more question for you. Nina and Alexander. Where are they?
Damn brat, figuring it out so quickly.
Brother!
Oh yeah, I figured it out. You did it again! 2 years ago it was your wife! This time, you used your own daughter and her dog to transmute a talking chimera!
However, I have watched the 2003 original version of this scene, and I do think that that version is way better. I think that the 2003 one establishes the fact that Nina is in physical pain because of the transmutation, and the fact that Edward really was going to beat Tucker to death. Back to Brotherhood, we also meet Scar for the first time this episode, another one of my favorite characters, and at the end of the episode, he kills Shao Tucker and the Nina Chimera. A dark conclusion to one of the darker episodes of the show.
Shall be punished.
At this point, the show has presented 4 banger episodes in a row, and now, in my opinion, it slows down to a minor drop-off these next couple of episodes. Episode 5 is good. I don't have much to say about it, though. We see Scar and Ed fight for the first time. We learn that Scar is Ishvalan, which we don't know much about yet. It's a perfectly fine setup episode for Scar and some others like Hawkeye, Mustang, and Envy. Episode 6, Road of Hope. We meet Tim Marco for the first time, and he gives the brothers some exposition. We reunite with Winry for the first time in the present. She is Edward's automail engineer, and she fixes the damages to him sustained in the Scar fight. It's a perfectly fine episode. Hidden Truths is another perfectly fine episode. We are introduced to Ross and Brosh, who will act as the Elric's bodyguards for the next couple of episodes. We actually learn a big piece of info in this episode, and that's that to make a Philosopher's Stone, you have to sacrifice human lives. The Fifth Laboratory is another fine episode. We meet Barry the Chopper for the first time, who's a great comic relief character for this arc, and Ed actually comes face to face with some of the homunculi for the first time, and Barry plants some doubts in Alphonse's mind about Edward. Created Feelings is a step above our last few episodes, but not in line with the first 4. We get some good character moments with Ed and Al. Ed convinces Al that Barry was lying, and he ends up beating Al in a fight for the first time. We also get some good character work from Winry as well, while she stays with the Hughes family. Separate Destinations is right back to form, an absolute banger of an episode, one of the saddest episodes of the show. as we shockingly lose Maze. Maze's death is another one of the best scenes in the show. He is first attacked by lust, he disposes of her, and goes outside to call Mustang and tell him the sensitive information he found, but Envy chases him down, changes into Maze's wife, and kills him.
You really are a smart man, Lieutenant Colonel. Did you ever think that'd be the cause of your death?
Come on, have a heart, will ya? I've got a wife and daughter waiting for me. So the last thing I'm gonna do is die on them.
You look surprised.
What the hell are you?
Seeing Maze's daughter's reaction at the funeral is heartbreaking, and to see Mustang as well, one of the most badass characters in the show, also shed tears is powerful.
Except, it's a terrible day for rain.
What do you mean? It's not raining.
Yes, it is.
Mustang goes full Batman here at the end of the episode as well and finds clues about Maze's death. This episode really has it all.
So, I guess he wasn't as helpful to us as we had hoped.
But not a waste of our time. He was more helpful than he meant to be. He said that they had a strong lead, singular tense, on a few suspects, multiple suspects. Which leads me to believe they suspect a group is responsible. And his obstinate refusal to talk, even though I ordered him to, can only mean there's gotta be an officer above me that's ordered him to keep quiet. Most likely someone of senior ranking. The last clue was that he happened to mention the Elric brothers. They were researching the Philosopher's Stone.
I hate to say it, but it sounds like there might be some kind of conspiracy going on here. But how does it all tie together?
The next episode, Miracle at Rush Valley, is basically just filler, let's be real. It's not a bad episode though, I actually like it, but not enough to talk about. One is All is One is another fantastic emotional episode. We meet the Elric's teacher, Izumi, for the first time, and we flash back through the brothers' training. But the ending of this episode is truly fantastic. I literally looked it up to make sure it was in this episode in particular while writing this part of the script, and I almost started crying watching it on mute. That's how good it is. Izumi tells the boys that she also tried human transmutation to bring her child back. Ed and Al try and play it off and talk like their transmutation doesn't weigh a toll on them, and she hugs them and tells them that it's okay to hurt. Gets me every time. Truly special and a great scene.
And our child as well. He was not able to take a living breath in this world. And so, I committed the taboo. As a result, I lost parts of my inner organs. What an idiot I was. Now I realize I should have told you sooner. It must have been awful.
Nah, I did it to myself after all. It hasn't been that big a deal, actually.
Besides, now I've got this long list of things I get to look forward to eating when I have my body back. Right, brother?
Yeah, it's nothing.
You darling little idiots. It's okay to hurt.
Beasts of Doubleth is another good episode. We meet Greed for the first time, and his fight with Edward is great, but the next episode is where it truly gets amazing. Those Who Lurk Underground is another one of my favorite episodes. This is where we see Bradley truly show how scary he is by absolutely murdering every one of Greed's henchmen and defeating Greed himself. And if that wasn't bad enough, we learn that Bradley, the Fuhrer of the country, is Wrath himself. Then we see Father for the first time, and at the time of viewing this episode, most of us believe that this is Ed and Al's father, which is another mindfuck, and then Father kills Greed on top of that. This episode takes everything we thought we knew so far and flips it on its head. Envoy from the East is the next episode, and it's the first episode of our next arc. We meet Mei Chang, Ling, Lanfan, and Fu for the first time. However, that is basically all that happens this episode. We meet the new characters for this arc, and we see that Team Mustang is holding Barry the Chopper captive. Footsteps of a Comrade in Arms is a pretty good episode. We see Sheska leak info to Envy, who was disguised. We see how Edward, Al, and Winry react to Maze's death, which is extremely sad to watch. And if that wasn't enough, the show kicks us while we're down again by ending the episode with Ross being arrested and being framed for the murder of Maze. Cold Flame is fantastic. We see that Ross is imprisoned for Maze's murder, and Mustang learns of this. Barry the Chopper also sees in the newspaper that Ross is in prison, and he knows that she's innocent, so he goes to break her out, and that he does. This entire escape scene is great. Barry and Ross run into the Elrics. Barry holds them off, however Ross runs straight into Mustang, and then this happens.
You're Maria Ross, right?
What the fuck? Mustang straight up kills Ross, avenging Maze and pissing off the Elrics who know that she was innocent. Truly a shock-filled episode and a great one as well. The Arrogant Palm of a Small Human is another solid episode. We see that Ross's death was fake, and that Team Mustang, along with Barry, had faked her death to try and draw out the real killers of Maze.
From this point on, you're dead. Snap out of it.
We also learn another big piece of info, and that being that Scar was the one who killed Winry's parents back during the Fallen War. A solid episode overall that sets up for a great one.
How did they die?
They were killed. They were both murdered in cold blood. And it was by the hand of an Ishvalan they'd saved.
But that's so...
I'm so sorry. There was nothing we could do to stop him.
Tell me who did it!
His face was wrapped in bandages. But he was an Ishvalan monk and his right arm was tattooed.
Death of the Undying is one of the best episodes of the show. My second favorite, in fact. An absolute banger from start to finish. Mustang vs. Lust is hands down my favorite moment in the entire show. Mustang surviving by cauterizing his wound, coming back to save Hawkeye, and then being the first person to kill a homunculus. Absolute badass.
Looks like I can get you on your knees after all.
He's using the flint for ignition, and he carved a transmutation circle into his hand. You should have bled to death by now!
I seared the wound closed. I came close to passing out from the pain. You told me I couldn't kill you, but I'd like to try and prove you wrong! So let's see, how many times is it gonna take?
You killed me. I hate losing. But there are worse ways to die than at the hands of a man like you. I love how cold and focused your eyes are. I look forward to the day when those eyes will be wide with agony.
This episode is packed with great character moments, not just revolving around Mustang. Hawkeye losing her cool is super interesting to see, as it's the first time we've ever seen her like this. We also see Alphonse letting Hawkeye know that he will not leave her behind, and he's fully committed to saving lives, no matter the cost. Then, after the entire thrill and action is over, the episode ends on another massive cliffhanger as Ed encounters his father for the first time since he left back when the boys were young. A fantastic episode.
It can't be. Is it? Hohenheim.
Father Before the Grave is a solid episode. We learned some more key info in this one, that being that the thing that Ed and Al transmutated was not their mother, and that Izumi did not transmutate her child. This confirms that human transmutation is not possible. A good episode overall. Advance of the Fool is a good setup episode. It gets all of our characters into one place to set up for an eventful battle next episode, and the episode ending with Bradley attacking Lawn Fawn is a good cliffhanger. Backs in the Distance is a really good episode. The entire episode revolves around Scar and Winry. Winry pointing the gun at Scar and Ed talking her down is an amazing moment. Him telling her that she's meant to heal, not hurt, is fantastic writing. Seeing Scar's backstory is another great moment, and it's super important to see what he's gone through. However, seeing him kill Winry's parents is terrible, and we can't forgive him for that, even though he's suffered for so much. It's truly genius writing. A great episode overall. Girl on the Battlefield is another great episode. The Bradley, Ling, and Lawn Fawn chase is great. Ling using the flash bomb and Bradley revealing himself to stay in the chase is a standout moment. In this episode, Winry reveals that she may be falling for Ed, which has always been suspected, but now we finally know that it's true. Ling telling Ed, Al, and Mustang that Bradley is a homunculus is huge news. Now the biggest secret at this point has been revealed to our main characters. Then Gluttony hatches a pissy fit and eats half of the hideout to end the episode, leaving us in an interesting spot for the next. Inside the Belly is a good episode. The entire episode revolves around our characters escaping from the hideout or fighting Gluttony and Envy. The fight ends with Gluttony eating Envy, Ed, and Ling on accident, and then the episode ends on a great cliffhanger of Bradley confronting Mustang. Solid episode. A Doorway of Darkness is another great episode that progresses the story further while having some bombshells and fun moments. Envy reveals himself to be the catalyst in starting the Ishvalan Civil War by disguising as a military member and shooting an Ishvalan child. This is truly one of the most shocking reveals in the show, and it got me pretty good. We see Bradley disband Team Mustang by sending them to different command centers and making Hawkeye his personal assistant to distance her from Mustang. Then, Alphonse convinces Gluttony to take him to Father. It seems that all of our characters are converging in one spot to make for an epic confrontation. Reunion is another great episode. All of the stuff with Envy, Ling, and Edward is fantastic. The ending of this episode is brilliant. Edward transmutates himself and he ends up finding Al's body. And it's tragic because he can't take it or save it, but that's what makes it great. We also see Bradley's backstory and how he became a homunculus. Interlude Party is the first episode I actually dislike, and for good reason. It's a recap episode. Now, normally I wouldn't have even watched this, however I was informed that I should watch this episode anyways, as it does contain original content and not just filler. However, it doesn't help when that original content is like 10% of the actual episode, and it's not even that good. Now, I'm sure that this content contributes to Hohenheim's arc, and I definitely would understand it now, after knowing the full scope of things, but at the time of viewing, it made no sense to me. I also don't like where they place this recap episode in between two other really good episodes with a lot going on. It really breaks the pacing, and it hurts the show for me. Father is another great episode, however. We get a lot of action, but the main big moment is Ling becoming Greed. And for the entire rest of the show, the Ling-Greed fusion is hands down one of the best characters in the show. One of the only ones I end up caring about by the end of things, but we'll get to that later. Also, at the end of the episode, Gluttony dies, but Father takes his stone and promises to revive him. Struggle of the Fool is a solid episode. It's really just a cooldown for the last couple of episodes, but the fact that a fucking recap episode was plopped in the middle of Reunion and Father renders this cooldown useless. Bradley reveals himself as Wrath to the Elric brothers, and there's a great moment where Mustang asks if it was Bradley himself who killed Maze. We also see Scar and Marco meet for the first time, and that's about all the important stuff here. Solid episode overall. The Ishvalan War of Extermination is fantastic. It's a major exposition episode. We hear from Hawkeye's experience during the Ishvalan War, how they were forced to exterminate the Ishvalans. Bradley signed the document to have this happen, and he even doubled down to the leader of the Ishvalans by denying his offer to be a sacrifice. We also see Kimberly for the first time since episode 1. I absolutely love Kimberly as a character, but I have feelings about his arc as a whole that we'll end up getting to later. We also see at the end of the episode that Scar killed Marco after Marco explained his role in the Ishvalan War to Scar. A fantastic exposition episode, dumps a lot of info on you without ever feeling boring. The 520 Sen's Promise is a fine episode. We end up finding out that Marco is alive and his death was staged. Scar deforms Marco's face so he isn't recognizable. Then the big moment comes at the end where we find out that Kimberly is being released from prison with the sole mission to retrieve Marco and kill Scar. The Führer's Son is another fine episode. Kimberly continues the chase for Scar. And I just want to state here that at this point in the story, we have Kimberly, the heartless former state alchemist who's murdered countless Ishvalans and is tasked with killing Scar. And then we have Scar, whose mission is to avenge the Ishvalans, and knows Kimberly as the man who killed his brother, so surely these two will end up fighting at some point and it'll all come to a head, right? Nope. But I'll once again talk more about that later. Edward and Alphonse end up meeting Bradley's son Salim, which is some innocent, fun, filler-esque content, until you realize later that it wasn't. The episode ends with Ed and Al heading north to try and meet Armstrong's sister and learn more about alchemy. The Northern Wall of Briggs is a good episode. We start off with Kimberly and Scar encountering each other and a fight ensues. And at this point, I am fucking hyped. I even typed to Tyson at this point in the story that this was my most anticipated fight of the series. This fight is good, don't get me wrong, and I like how it ends, with Kimberly getting wrecked because he's rusty since he's been in prison. But I'm definitely looking forward to their next encounter. I mean, we have 31 episodes left. Surely these two will resolve their issues in another battle. Fucking no. These two never see each other again. And this is my first big issue in the show. I love Scar, and I love Kimberly, and you build up how much these two hate each other, to the point where it's my most anticipated thing in the show. Like, I'm turning on the show at this point to see how this subplot furthers, and this is literally the last of it. It's straight up unfinished. Maybe this is on me for getting so invested in another plotline when the whole show revolves around Ed and Al, of course, but I feel like this subplot got dropped so goddamn early, and I have more gripes with how they handle Kimberly later. Anyways, we also see that Ed and Al arrive at Briggs, and they meet Armstrong's sister, Olivier. This was a good episode at the time, but looking back, it just makes me upset. Ice Queen is a good setup episode. We meet Olivier and Buccaneer more in depth. We meet another Ishvalan who's stationed here named Miles, who I like a lot. We catch up with Fallman, who is a Team Mustang member who got stationed here in that whole debacle. The meat and potatoes of this episode is when Sloth shows up for the first time and attacks Fort Briggs. But this episode only really shows the first half of this fight, and it picks up way more in the next episode. The show really goes on a strong run in these next few episodes, kicking it off with the shape of this country. We see the gang defeat Sloth in a really clever way of having him freeze. Raven shows up and helps Kimberly get back on his feet. We finally find out that Father's plan is to have a statewide transmutation circle, and that's what the purpose of this tunnel was, to link between the locations. And we wrap this episode up with Olivier talking to Raven while the others listen in, trying to get secret info out of him. Family portrait is great. We see more of Hohenheim before he left his family. His moment taking the family portrait is a fantastic moment. Then we see Pride for the first time as he massacres the Briggs soldiers in the tunnels. It's absolutely haunting. Then Olivier kills Raven after sealing Sloth in the tunnel, and if that wasn't enough, Kimblee's here at Briggs, and he brought Winry with him. Unbeknownst to her, she's being used as a hostage for the boys. Great episode. The first homunculus is incredible. Another one of my favorite episodes here. We get cute Edward and Winry stuff to start the episode, and then we transition straight back into the tunnel, where Buccaneer finds the distraught soldiers who were attacked by Pride. They tell Buccaneer that Pride can be found in the shadows, and that brings us to the absolutely epic reveal that Hawkeye figures out. Salim Bradley, the Fuhrer's son, is in fact Pride. The entire reveal is genius. Mrs. Bradley calling Salim her pride and joy moments before the reveal is amazing, and eagle-eyed viewers will catch it moments before. Then when Pride confronts Hawkeye, he's straight up terrifying. It's great how they can make this previously wholesome kid into one of the most menacing villains in the show in mere minutes. Then we get Kimblee forcing Edward and Al to find Scar, using Winry as the hostage. But honestly, while this stuff is good, the meat and potatoes of this episode has already happened. I love genuinely everything about the Pride reveal in this episode, and it's done to near perfection.
Doesn't apply since he's adopted. I really shouldn't act so surprised, though. He is related to my husband, so he must have some of his genes.
He's not related to you?
Oh, no.
This just doesn't add up. The Colonel told me that King Bradley was raised as a test subject. He doesn't have any family. He didn't even know his parents, and I got that strange feeling from Salim. Could he be?
So, you've put it all together?
Conflict at School is a good episode, but it's the start of some of my problems with the back half of the show. Before I get into anything negative I have to say and all of the problems that I have, if you can disprove what I have to say, or you point out something that I missed that will fix one of my issues, please tell me. I'd love to see if I've missed anything that will make me like the show even more. But this episode introduces Kimblee's Chimera Men, and my god, they are here for the rest of the show, and they are fucking useless. I bet you right now, let's play a game. Name all 4 of these chimeras. Go ahead, try it. They're all in the final battle of the show, and 20 plus episodes, surely you remember their names. The fact that I feel the end of the show gets so bloated and we throw in these 4 useless ass Chimera characters to add even more characters is crazy to me. All of the best stuff in this episode is once again with the homie Scar and his interactions with Winry. The fight with the Chimera Men isn't a bad one, but it does not have any purpose. Like, I'm serious. You can rip these 4 chimeras out of the show and you lose nothing. One of them ends up getting the stone from Kimblee later, and that's literally the only thing significant that any of the 4 of them do. And what I think would have been cooler is if Scar kills Kimblee, gets his stone, and gives it to the brothers, completing his arc of avenging Ishval and his transformation into a better person. I'm not saying I'm better than the writers, because I'm not, but that's just an idea I came up with that I think would have been better. Daydream is fantastic. The entire episode is just the core group talking with each other and coming up with a plan, yet none of it's boring. Once again, I will reiterate that the Scar-Winry dynamic is the best thing happening in this episode. Winry choosing to bandage up Scar even though he killed her parents, because that's what they would have wanted, is great writing. Miles' motivations are revealed as he explains that he joined the military to essentially clear the Ishvalan name. The characters come up with the plan to hide Scar out at Fort Briggs. However, we learn that it's been taken over by Bradley's men and it isn't safe. So Alphonse sets off to catch up with the group and warn them.
This is immortality. No, you must be wrong. I don't understand it. You said if we were in the center of the circle, we wouldn't be on. What the? What's going on here? Hey, homunculus!
The true center of the transmutation circle is right here where you're standing.
It is?
Surely you remember that your blood is within me. I used it to open the doorway. Blood brother of mine, von Hohenheim. Right now, you and I are at the center of everything.
Now we have arrived at Homunculus, the Dwarf in the Flask. This is my favorite episode of the show. The majority of this episode is a flashback, and while it is the best part, the progression of the main story in this episode is just as good. Olivier convinces Bradley that she's on his side. Hawkeye tells Mustang that Celine Bradley is a homunculus in one of the best and cleverly written scenes in the entire show.
Major Miles and Buccaneer don't show us up like they have in the past.
Miles. Buccaneer. Okay. And York, Ida, and Sugar all spoke to her too. Havoc. Oscar. Mike. Uni. Nora. Charlie. Then Uni and Lucy again. Uni once more. And then Sterling. Celine Bradley is a homunculus.
We see Hohenheim heal Izumi and reveal that he is essentially a living Philosopher's Stone. But the main focus of this episode is the dual origin of Hohenheim and Father, and it is a great one. We see why they look the exact same, and we see why Hohenheim is so guilt-ridden. It's because the souls of his entire city reside inside of him. This entire origin story is brilliant. Every character is on fire in this episode. It's the episode that's closest to being perfect in my eyes. The Abyss ends the streak of incredible episodes. That's not to say that the episodes after this one are bad, it's just that this particular streak has been next level. This episode is basically just Edward fighting. We get Edward versus Kimberly, which is great, but then that leads us into a fight with Edward versus the other two useless-ass chimeras. Once again, this fight isn't terrible. I just cannot bring myself to care in the slightest about these chimera characters. Edward being injured and being forced to sacrifice some of his lifespan to heal his wound is 1,000% the highlight of this episode. It's great. Then the chimeras decide to save him, and they get Kimberly's Philosopher's Stone, like I mentioned earlier. Literally, the entire point of these characters is to grab that stone. We also see Al reach Scar's group and warn them, but then he loses consciousness because of his spell break mumbo-jumbo. Pretty great episode. The fights are great. Signs of a counteroffensive is good, but this is an episode that I have issues with. All of the stuff with Scar's group and Al figuring out the notes is good, and the Hohenheim Pride stuff is actually really good. I love Hohenheim in the majority back half of the show. But my main issue with this episode is Kimberly. Now, I know I keep shitting on this character, but it's genuinely because I loved everything about him and where the story was going with him until it gets completely butchered. Pride tells Kimberly to start the Blood Crest in Fort Briggs, so off-screen, he contacts another fucking nation that's at odds with Fort Briggs, and an entire fucking war breaks out. How did Kimberly go about doing this? The best part is, we don't even see Kimberly again after this for 9 episodes. He just does this and disappears. You're telling me they staged an entire attack, a declaration of war on Fort Briggs just off of Kimberly's word? Give me a break. Bite of the Ant literally starts with the nation of Drachma completely demolished, so this nation had the audacity to stage an attack based off of just the word of Kimberly and then get destroyed off screen. Even the Fort Briggs men say it was easy, so why were they always worried about an attack from Drachma this entire time when they were able to destroy them so goddamned easy without their leader even being there? This entire subplot is in shambles. The rest of this episode is actually pretty good, however. The Envy Marco fight is badass. Marco, who's a character we haven't seen that much of, just straight up bodies Envy. It's a great scene. Then the group goes their separate ways. Mei Chang is off back to her clan with Envy, Scar and Marco are going off, and we see Alphonse arrive in Lior and reunite with his dad, Hohenheim. We also see this military officer show Olivier the humanoid army, which is another issue we'll get to later, but it's a great cliffhanger in the moment. Revving at full throttle is a good episode. The entire episode is just solid setup. However, the standout storyline in this one is the one with Ling and Greed. Greed kills one of his old friends, and Ling chastises him for it. Then when Greed starts to remember his old memories, he goes off and attacks Bradley, which leaves for an awesome cliffhanger. The Promised Day is a fine episode. After the Greed-Bradley fight, it's mainly just set up for the namesake Promised Day. Alphonse is warning everyone, and we see Edward and the Chimeras squad up with Greed, but after that, not a lot else going on in this one. Also, an extremely weird scene in this one. Pretty sure it's supposed to be played for laughs, but it has not aged well at all.
Your aim is looking fine, but not nearly as fine as your...
What do you think you're doing, General Grumman?
You've got to keep your guard up on the battlefield. But seriously...
Looming Shadows is a good episode, but a weird one. We get Edward and Winry's last interactions before the Promised Day. Al gets ambushed by Pride and the returning Gluttony. Then we get this whole Bradley death setup. They end up getting him on a train and then blowing it up, which takes him out of this arc for the next 9 episodes. Then the episode ends on this weird-ass scene where Olivier is trying to take control, and Father and Sloth just straight up appear in the room. Like, where the fuck did they even come from? I was convinced this was a dream sequence at first, but no, they just magically appear here. A Mystery of Darkness starts the trend of a lot of these back half episodes bleeding together for me. Like, the fight with Pride starts here and goes on for like 3 or 4 more episodes, so it becomes hard for me to differentiate a lot of them. This episode is just the beginning of this entire Pride fight. It ends with Lanfan returning with a new arm, and this is another issue that I've already mentioned. We have way too many characters in this final battle. And I'm just going to tackle this entire issue right now. There are 31 good characters in this final battle. 31. Now it ends up getting so bad that I start forgetting people, like Mei Chang, who's a significant character. Envy tricks her to heading back to Central, then we don't see her for like 10 episodes until she just pops up again. It gets so bad that I even start to forget about characters like Alphonse. He's our secondary protagonist. Now you'd think in a final battle like this that they'd kill off a few of these characters to trim the fat and make room for the other important characters. Well, you'd be wrong. We lose 2 characters during the battle, Fu and Buccaneer. We do end up losing Hohenheim as well, but this is once the entire battle is over, so I'm not going to count it here. How many of these characters am I supposed to care about? Fu and Buccaneer's deaths are supposed to be emotional, and the deaths are done well, but I could genuinely care less about these characters because Fu has been in like 6 episodes at this point with like 2 lines in each of them, and Buccaneer is just a badass NPC type character. This is what happens when you end up having an overabundance of characters. Viewers will only end up attached to their favorites, and the rest will get lost in the shuffle. The Oath in the Tunnel is actually a very good episode. We see Mustang again. This is my favorite character in the show, and I forgot he was fucking here because we haven't seen him in forever. The fight with Pride continues, and we reach a really cool moment. Gluttony starts to die, so Pride just straight up eats him, so he can gain Gluttony's sense of smell. I really like how they make the homunculus with the least imposing image be the one that's the most menacing. The end of the episode ends with Team Mustang kidnapping Bradley's wife, which is a cool moment as well. Filial, I don't know how to pronounce this word, affection is a good episode. I actually realized while writing the script for this part that Kimberly is actually in this episode. Didn't remember that, but we see a 30-second scene of him in a room with Deadish Valens. What the fuck? Where has this guy been? Where is he even at during this scene? How did he find these Ishvalans? Like, dude, I cannot be the only person who sees this. Kimblee has gone from one of my favorite characters to one of my most hated in just a couple of episodes, because his writing has gone completely out the window. The scene where Hohenheim traps Pride is great. This leads to a fun dynamic between Al and Pride, who are stuck together. Ed and Scar's groups reunite, and we get some more Team Mustang stuff, but at this point, while watching, I was starting to lose interest, and that should not be the case when we are heading into the climax. Upheaval in Central is a good episode. We get a lot of Team Mustang stuff, and we see Ross again for the first time since episode 18, which is a pleasant surprise. However, I have a massive problem. We see Brosh periodically throughout the Promised Day, and he realizes that Ross is alive during the battle, and then we get a scene where Ross and Brosh actually reunite and hug. And I kid you fucking not. After that scene, we do not see them ever again. The final battle is so insanely bloated, it's not even funny. This episode ends with the Immortal Legion being unleashed, which is a good cliffhanger. The Immortal Legion is a solid episode, but here we go with some more problems. We see that Pride has been tapping on Al's helmet with a stick, and we get this cool reveal that he's been tapping Morse code this entire time. Then he gets broken out as Heinkel realizes that he's been tapping Morse code by none other than fucking Kimblee. Dude, how the fuck does any of this make any sense? How did Kimblee get here? How did he even hear this message? He's a human. And Pride has been tapping the helmet inside of a giant fucking stone box. How in the world would Kimblee be able to locate Pride, let alone hear the message? This is the episode where Heinkel gives the stone to Alphonse, thus rendering the Chimeras useless for the rest of the entire series. Envy returns back to human form, and the mannequin soldiers get unleashed, and we see Sloth attack Olivier and Alex. Combined strength makes me sad. This continues the fight between Al, Pride, and Kimblee. Heinkel ends up returning to the fight for a moment, and that moment is fatally biting Kimblee in the neck. After that happens, Pride eats Kimblee. Kimblee went from the character, along with Scar, that I was turning the show on every day for, to just making me upset every time he was on screen. He dies like an absolute bitch. I have no idea why this character was even here. Like, honestly, what was the point in his relationship with Scar? I want you guys to remember that Kimblee was brought into this story to kill Scar. And they fight one time for less than 5 minutes, and that fight resolved absolutely nothing. Why did these two never interact after that? Kimblee killed Scar's brother, for fuck's sake. Did the writers just forget that? I seriously have no idea what they were doing with Kimblee post-episode 33. The rest of this episode is fine, but I don't really have a lot to say about it. I do have a lot to say the next 2 episodes, though. Flame of Vengeance is fantastic. A real true breath of fresh air at this point for me. Genuinely, I lose interest in the show after these next 2 episodes because the third act peaks here with Mustang vs. Envy. Way back since episode 10, Mustang has been hunting for the killers of Maze, and he finally learns that it's Envy, and he does not hold back at all.
He won't kill his friend! What's wrong with you? You didn't even hesitate to incinerate your best friend!
Mace Hughes is dead. That's a fact. And you invoke his image. You must be a glutton for punishment.
I'll show you real punishment! Oh, kid! My eyes!
So I'm curious. Were you trying to get close so I wouldn't use heavy fire? No one told you that I can do pinpoint aiming? Too bad for you. Because I can!
Colonel, I'm sorry, but I can't wait.
I just want to point out how satisfying the build-up to this is. This is exactly how Scar and Kimberly should have been. This is exactly what I wanted that to be. Beyond the Inferno is incredible. When Mustang finds Envy in the tunnel and just loses it, it's one of the best scenes of the show.
You damn human! Don't you underestimate me!
This is long-term storytelling paid off. This whole entire subplot was done so well. Envy killing himself because Edward's analysis of him was so spot on is the perfect end to this character. This episode was amazing. The adults' way of life is good. Sig and Izumi show up to help the Armstrongs, and I love Sig and Alex's instant bromance. They kill Sloth, but this does bring me to an issue. I think this is one that the comments can help resolve because I think I might have missed something here. The mannequin soldiers most definitely escaped from underground because Olivier and Alex and other above ground people start fighting them. So what happened there? Were all of the mannequin soldiers that made it above ground just killed? And did I just miss that? I'm not sure. But this episode ends with the return of Bradley, which is an awesome cliffhanger. The Return of the Führer is a badass episode. Bradley starting off the episode by soloing a fucking tank is not what I expected, but it is a very welcome surprise.
Take over the controls!
Yes, sir!
Damn! Where is he?
Fu shows up to help Greed and Buccaneer fight Bradley, and this entire subplot is just pretty good. Eternal Leave is an episode I have strong feelings about. We see both Fu and Buccaneer's deaths in this episode, and while they are both done well, I do not care about these characters at all. The only semblance of a reaction I have is when Ling starts to get emotional because he is the only character here that I care about. This entire end to the fight with Fu and Buccaneer's sacrifice is very cool though, I have to admit it.
Please forgive my shameful death.
That Philosopher's Stone might have given you the eyes of a god, but even you can't dodge an attack if you can't see it coming! Alright, old man. Maybe you are going to hell, but you aren't going alone. I'll keep you company on the ride down.
Oh, you have my gratitude. Thank you.
My other main issue with this episode is the introduction of the gold-toothed doctor, an antagonistic figure that doesn't even have a name, introduced in episode 57 of a 64-episode series. The entire point of this character is just so Mustang can sacrifice him. But for the next 3 episodes, Scar, Mustang, and Hawkeye are stuck fighting this dude, so they have something to do. It's absolutely a waste of time and not needed whatsoever. Sacrifices is fine. We see the gold-toothed doctor get the better of Mustang and Hawkeye, and he slits Hawkeye's throat to try and force Mustang into doing the transmutation. That's honestly all that happens in this episode. Lost Light is good, but it renders the entire last episode useless once Mustang says, "Cool, you slit her throat, but I'm still not doing your transmutation." Then May and the Chimeras show up, forgot they were here because of the overabundance of characters, but May heals Hawkeye up and she's good as new. Sick fake-out death in the last episode because we can't kill any major characters. I don't have an issue with happy endings and all of the main characters living, but doing this fake-out death just to render it useless 10 minutes later is some serious Rise of Skywalker level shit. Pride arrives and forces Mustang to do the transmutation with the gold-toothed doctor as the sacrifice. Real convenient that this random antagonist was here ready to be sacrificed when Mustang didn't sacrifice Hawkeye. Mustang loses his eyes as the price for transmutation, and Scar and Bradley begin their fight. Eye of Heaven, Gateway of Earth is an insane episode. I don't even know what to think of it. I genuinely don't even know how to react to the ending of this episode where Father absorbs God. I don't know if it makes sense or if it doesn't. I'm just lost at this point. Where did this even come from? When did the story ever build to this? Watch the first 3 episodes and then just skip to this one. I never imagined we'd be here, but here we are. Scar Bradley fight is great though. He who would swallow God is good. I just want to copy and paste a sentence from Wikipedia summarizing this bit, because me myself, I don't think I know how to. Those present in Father's lair survived the human transmutation, discovering the homunculus has used over 50 million Amestrian souls to suppress the Eye of God within a reborn body. Father neutralizes the use of alchemy and prepares to annihilate them. However, over the years, Hohenheim had placed fragments of his own Philosopher's Stone across the country to neutralize the transmutation circle. These stone fragments are activated by the Eclipse's Umbra, and the human souls are ripped from Father. He is weakened and forced to relinquish the Eye of God. Father then attacks Edward's group, but May's alchemy combined with Hohenheim's Philosopher's Stone resist him. This is just an absolutely insane climax, and I'm not the biggest fan of it personally. At this point, I'm struggling to figure out what's happening. And I'm sure that's just a me problem, but it is what it is. Scar ends up killing Bradley in this episode in a fantastic scene. This overshadows the entire stuff with Father, as I have been greatly anticipating how Scar's arc will end the entire show. I love how it ends personally. I just think Kimberly should have been involved in it.
I myself have never believed in faith or God. If they exist, perhaps this is their way of divine justice and providence. And it seems they've sent a visitor to do the deed. Here to avenge your grandfather.
And speaking of Kimberly, we do see him again in this episode for his final scene, and I actually really love it. Pride wants to take Edward's body, and Kimberly's soul from inside Pride calls him on his bullshit, since Pride has always hated humans. Edward then destroys Pride.
You can't have it, Pride. I won't let you take this body. It's not a good fit for a homunculus.
Kimberly! There's no way! How could you maintain your individuality among this tempest of souls? It's just not possible!
You call this a tempest? Oh, stop. You're going to make me laugh. The bitterness that all of these voices contain soothes me like a lullaby.
Why are you interfering? Kimberly, why?
Not by choice. I was perfectly content, but when you decided to throw away your honor as a homunculus, you forced me to step in. You speak of your precious pride, that quality for which you were named. But then you suddenly find yourself in grave danger, and you seek to escape into the body of a human, the lower life form that you so despise. It's pathetic. You're a disgrace.
I think this conclusion for Kimberly is a good one. I just don't see how this was the direction the writers wanted to take with this character. A Fierce Counterattack is just a big fighting episode as the fight with Father continues. However, it ends on a bang with Alphonse convincing May to transmute his body back in exchange for Edward's arm so Edward can still fight and free himself. A fantastic scene to end the episode on. The Other Side of the Gateway is a very good episode. They finally kill Father, and Greed sacrifices himself in a great scene. But the truly amazing stuff happens once the battle's over. Edward transmuting himself and his ability to ever use alchemy again to bring Alphonse back to his original body is the perfect ending to the arc of these two characters. Then that brings us to Hohenheim, who dies on Trisha's grave in one of the most beautiful scenes of the show.
Living through all of these endless years, I always felt like I'd been struck with a curse. But then I found you, and we had our sons, and I suddenly felt blessed, grateful for the life I had. I've had a fulfilling life. Thanks to you, it's been enough. Thank you, Trisha. But now, believe it or not, I actually want to keep on living. I guess I'm pretty hopeless, aren't I, Trisha?
Hohenheim! I didn't know you were back. Silly old fool. Well, at least you died with a smile on your face, my friend.
I do have one question, though, that I'm sure the comments will answer. What exactly is Hohenheim's cause of death here? Because I genuinely don't know what it is. Not that it detracts from the scene. This scene is one of my favorites. Journey's End is a fantastic conclusion to this epic. It basically serves as an epilogue and shows where everyone's at after the ending of the Promised Day. Mustang gets his eyes back, Havoc gets his legs back, Scar and Miles are going to restore Ishval, Ling and May are going to return to their clans, Alphonse and Edward see Winry again in a heartwarming scene. Edward and Winry confess their love to each other.
Equivalent exchange! Huh? I'll give half of my life to you if you give half of yours to me!
Come on. Do you have to treat everything like alchemy? The whole equivalent exchange thing is just nonsense.
What'd you say?
Ugh, it's nonsense. How about I just give you my whole life?
And the end credits end with beautiful photographs of our characters living happily ever after. Alright, that was my review / retrospective of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and it's time for my rankings. I have my top 10 episodes, top 15 moments, top 30 characters, and I've ranked the openings for you all. Here it is, kicking it off with my top 10 episodes. My honorable mentions are Father, Fullmetal Alchemist, and The Abyss. At number 10, we have City of Heresy. Number 9, Reunion. Number 8, The Other Side of the Gateway. Number 7, Journey's End. Number 6, Separate Destinations. Number 5, The First Homunculus. 4, Those Who Lurk Underground. 3, An Alchemist's Anguish. 2, Death of the Undying. And 1, Homunculus, Dwarf in the Flask. Then we've got my top 30 characters. Number 30 is Vato Fallman. I actually kind of like this character. He's actually weirdly present in the final battle. He has some fun moments. I like that we see him in Briggs and he starts crying. I love seeing how stressed he is with Barry the Chopper early on. He's the very minor character, but he has fun moments. Number 29 is Lan Fan. She has very badass fights, and the scene of her cutting off her arm to escape Bradley is a great scene. One of her best. If not, no, it is her best. It is her best scene. 28, Maria Ross. The entire arc revolving around this character in episodes 17 and 18 are what places her here. It's an insanely good arc, and I really like it. Gene Havoc is the best minor member of Team Mustang. He gets the most characterization. Mustang never forgets about him, even in the finale when he is offered the Philosopher's Stone. And Havoc, when he was present in Death of the Undying and a couple of the other episodes before, he was always a great presence. And he secured a date with Lust. What's more to like than that, you know? 26 is Buccaneer. Buccaneer is really just an NPC badass, but he has really cool moments. His death scene is great, I will admit. Number 25 is Sloth. Sloth is just hilarious. He's not that much of a character, obviously, because he's just a big oaf, but, I love him. 24 is Tim Marco. Tim Marco's around for a lot of the series, and he has a badass moment against Envy that really just places him up here. Tim Marco, he's a wholesome dude, and his fight with Envy is badass. Number 23 is Father. This is the big bad of the series, and I have him this low on the list because I don't like him that much, but his backstory is awesome. It's my favorite episode in the entire series, but a lot of the stuff in the back half of the series is what tanks him down to number 23. 22 is Alex Armstrong. Great character, funny-ass character. If you don't like Armstrong, what are you doing, you know? 21 is Barry the Chopper. Great comic relief character for the few episodes he's in. He simps for Hawkeye just like me, so we're very relatable in that sense. Number 20 is Miles. This is actually an underrated character. This is a character that should have been in the final battle instead of the fucking Chimeras. But Miles is great. I love his motivations. He's pretty menacing, and I just like Miles. 19 is Lust. Lust, of all the characters in Fullmetal Alchemist, I would say she has the best personality. Alright, I am just kidding. But Lust is a great foil for the early days of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, and of course her scene with Mustang is one of the best in the entire show. Number 18 is Izumi. Izumi is a super wholesome character. She's a great character. If you don't like Izumi, what are you doing? At number 17, I have Kimberly. Obviously, this is the character I've ranted about the entire video, but I can't help but place Kimberly this high because of how much I did like him in the early days, and I do like his final scene of calling Pride on his bullshit. Number 16 is Gluttony. Gluttony is an oddly wholesome homunculus. A brother just wants to eat, you know? A man just wants to eat. Let the boy eat. Number 15 is Pride. I love how they made this character a child, so on the outside he looks just like a normal regular child, but on the inside he is the most menacing homunculus. At 14 is Ling. Love Ling, he's a great character, but he is kind of absent for the back half of the show as greed kind of takes over him, and I didn't like a lot of early Ling, to be honest. 13, Maze. Maze Hughes dies in episode 10, and I have him at number 13 on my list. That just shows how good of a character he is. His death is the catalyst of the entire show, really, and he was always the most wholesome character, the funniest character. If you don't love Maze Hughes, what are you doing? Number 12 is Greed. Greed is like the first Greed is like okay, he's a good character, he's rebels. But when we get to Ling Greed, that's where this character excels, because Ling Greed is absolutely amazing. I love that Ling calls him out on his morals, and Greed's final scene, his sacrifice, is great. At number 11, I have Olivier, one of the most badass characters in the show. She has amazing fight scenes throughout the entire show. I love her personality, and I'm not saying that as like the Lust joke. I'm just saying I genuinely love her personality, how she's so fucking mad all the time. It's great. Number 10 is Winry. Obviously, another one of the most wholesome characters in the show. I love her interactions with Edward and how much they bicker with each other. Winry is great. Number 9 is Alphonse. This may be a hot take, but Alphonse in like the back half of the show when he's with Heinkel and Yoki is just... I forget about him. But obviously, Alphonse is our secondary protagonist. He is the most wholesome character in the show. I love Alphonse even though he's only at number 9. Number 8 is Van Hohenheim. Hohenheim is great. He's not in like the first 30 episodes of the show, but him in the back half of the show really makes up for that. He is genuinely one of the standouts of the back half of the show. I was complaining about the back half of the show this entire video. Hohenheim, every time Hohenheim was on screen, I enjoyed myself, however. 7 is Mei Chang, another super wholesome character. I love Mei Chang. She was one of my favorite characters along with Scar and Kimberly in like the middle of the show. Her and Scar's dynamic was weirdly wholesome. 6th is Wrath or Bradley. One of the most badass characters in the show. Every time Bradley has a fight, it's like an A tier or S tier fight. All of Bradley's fights are great. He's an absolute menace. Bradley is awesome. Number 5 is Envy. Envy was amazing, an amazing villain. Killed Maze, started the Ishvalan War. Like, Envy was the catalyst for a lot of the shit in this show. Every time they're on screen, they have amazing moments. Envy was amazing. At number 4, I have Hawkeye, one of my favorite characters in the entire show, another badass. A lot of these characters can be either categorized as wholesome or badass. Hawkeye is honestly both. She is weirdly wholesome. I love her relationship with Mustang. Her scene with Pride and figuring out that Pride was Salim is amazing. Amazing scene. I love Hawkeye. Number 3 is our main character. It's Edward Elric. If you don't like Edward, then you're not going to like the show, frankly. Edward has so many of the greatest moments in the entire show. Edward, what is there to say about Edward? He's amazing. Number 2 is Scar. I love Scar. His entire arc was fulfilling. If he got another fight with Kimberly and he killed Kimberly, he would be number 1. Genuinely, I love Scar. But the only minor hit to him is the fact that his thing with Kimberly never paid off. But his arc still gets completed. His fight with Bradley is fucking awesome. He restores Ishval. He uses alchemy at the end. He finally stops not using the reconstruction alchemy. And number 1 is obviously Mustang. He's my favorite character in the show. He's a badass. His fight with Lust is amazing. He's always, every time Mustang's on screen, I'm interested. He's just an absolute badass. I love his dynamic with everyone. His dynamic with Hawkeye is great. His dynamic with the Elrics is great. He never forgets about his team. He never forgets about Havoc. He is a great character. I love what they did with him. Mustang is awesome. Now, here are my top 15 moments of the series. Number 15, Fu and Buccaneer wound Bradley. Number 14, Ross's escape and fake death. Number 13, Envy's death. Number 12, Bradley is revealed to be Wrath. 11, Bradley returns to the battle. Number 10, Scar versus Bradley. Number 9, Ed and Al's speech to Rose. Number 8, Mustang versus Envy. Number 7, the Shao Tucker reveal. Number 6, Envy kills Hughes. Number 5, Father and Hohenheim open the transmutation circle. Number 4, Bradley kills McDougal. Number 3, Hawkeye finds out Salim is Pride. Number 2, Hohenheim's death. And number 1, Mustang kills Lust. Lastly, here are my rankings of the openings. At number 5, I have opening 4, Period by Chemistry. Great opening. None of these openings are bad, but this is just the weakest for me. It doesn't really have any standout visuals for me. The song is good. It's probably my least favorite song as well, so that pairing with I think it has the weakest visuals are the reason why it's the lowest. Still a great opening though. I don't hate it at all. Number 4 is opening 3. Song is great. It takes a while to get used to. I will admit that when I was watching this, I was going to assume it was going to be my favorite, but it grew on me. And then when it left, I was like, man, I wish we had that opening back. The shot of Kimberly standing in the red backdrop is genuinely one of my favorite anime shots ever. I don't know why. I just love that shot so much. And it's honestly one of the reasons why it's above opening 4. It has pretty mid visuals after that, though. And it has some cool transitions, but that's about it. Number 3 is opening 5. Some of the best visuals here. I love the camera pan through all the characters. The shot of their mom reaching out to Edward. Winry and Edward in bed together. There's a lot of great visuals here. The song is fire, of course. Rain is a great song. Number 2 is opening 2, Hologram. This is a great opening. Amazing visuals. The beat drop into the fucking action scenes is amazing. This is a fantastic opening. But number 1 is opening 1. Amazing visuals. You start off the opening with frickin' who you think is Edward, and then you learn it's Hohenheim. The beat drop is fantastic. The visuals are amazing. It shows every character. It's genuinely a perfect anime opening. It's one of my favorites. Probably top 3 for me. The song is my favorite of all 5 openings, and just the visuals are my favorite, so that's why opening 1 is number 1. And that's everything. Overall, I very much enjoyed this show, and even though I had issues with the back half of it, I had a great time. I enjoyed myself, and I would give this show a solid 7.5 to an 8 out of 10. On my very short list of animes, I'd put it at number 2, behind Attack on Titan, as those are the only animes I've seen. thank you all for watching. This video has taken forever to make, and that's why I've been gone for so long. I hope you guys know I appreciate your patience, and I'm excited to make some more content for you guys sooner rather than later. Be sure to like and subscribe for more, and have a wonderful day.